Hi guys, Samantha from Dressima Tutorials here, and today I am going to be showing you a really cool pendant using a mica shift and some washi tape. Now today's tutorial is sponsored because I got sent a number of these tapes and I'm going to be using them in today's tutorial. I do have a coupon code and that is right in the description below the video if you check that out. And there is a link in the description below to buy these tapes. The one that we're going to be using today is this one, and we're going to be using this alongside some pearl white polymer clay. So first thing you want to do is we want to be working with the polymer clay. Now the tapes that I'm working with today cannot be baked. I should just let you know that. There are other tapes in the line that can be baked and they're kind of more paper based. And I will be doing a tutorial on those in the future, but for now just know that the tapes that we're working with today can't be baked, so we have to make the pendant first. So I've got some pearl white here rolled out on my thicker setting of the pasta machine, and then I have my texture stamp of choice. Any texture stamp will work, just make sure it's deep enough that you can easily shave off pieces from it. And I'm just going to pop some water on there. You can also use cornstarch if you want, but I prefer using water when it comes to these kinds of things, just because it doesn't make the clay non-stick permanently. Okay, so just move that around the stamp, that's plenty. Grab this and I'll just place that down. Then I'll just use this sponge, and this prevents my fingers from sticking to the clay and it allows me to get a nice clean impression. You can also use a wet rag, but I do like using these sponges just because they also leave a nice texture on the back. So just press from one side of the stamp to the other, that way you won't trap any air bubbles and you'll get a nice clean impression. Okay, there we go. Then I'll just lift that out of the stamp and you can see the impression that we've got there. Put that to the side and dry your tile and make sure that the clay is also dry. Okay, then I'll pop that down and I'm very gently going to press on it so that it sticks to the tile, like so. Cut away the excess because that just will make shaving it a lot easier, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to bring over a nice thin blade, and the reason I'm using a thin blade is just because it just makes the process a lot easier, and they generally are sharper. I'm just going to bend that gently and slowly shave across the surface. Now keep in mind, because we are only using one colour of clay today, that if you mess it up, go too deep, or just in general don't like the effect, you can always just run it through the pasta machine and do it again, or swap to a different colour of clay. So this is a very stress-free technique. You can see there, you just clean it off like so. And every once in a while I will just run a rag that's wet across the blade so that I clean off any clay residue, because you'll find that it starts dragging after a little while once it's picked up a bit of that clay. So just make sure to clean it every once in a while. Generally after each swipe's a good idea, and you'll just find that the process is a lot easier if you do that. Okay, and there we go. Then when you've done that and you've shaved off most of it, I like to take a piece of plain printing paper and I will just burnish over the top. And I do this instead of running it through a pasta machine or rolling over it with my roller, because it will flatten it out, get rid of any raised areas, and just will make it nice smooth veneer while keeping the pattern the exact way it is. If you run it through a pasta machine or use a roller, you risk stretching the pattern. And also, especially if you roll it through a pasta machine, I find it doesn't really smooth out all that much anyway, unless the clay's very soft. There we go. That should do it. Doesn't take too long. Okay, let me just pick that up. And you can see there it is completely flat, but we have achieved an image. Okay, so then grab another piece of plain printing paper because we want to make sure that the back's nice and clean. You can see there it's got a lot of shiny spots and divots, so that's not something we want. So pop that onto a piece of paper, grab another piece and give it another thorough burnish. And I'll do that from the top, like so, and I'll repeat the same on the back. Okay, and that will make sure that the back is nice and smooth and clean, and it means that we won't have to do much, if any, sanding later on, which is always something that's nice to skip. Okay, then I'm just going to bring over a round circle, and now before I cut, I'm just going to bring over the tape that I have chosen. And you can see here lots of patterns. I'm going to be using this pattern, so I've checked that the circle fits in a way that I want. It does cut off a little bit of the pattern, but that's something that I do want. If you don't, just use a larger circle, but just make sure that your cutter fits the just make sure that you've chosen the pattern that you want before cutting out your piece. So I'm going to cut that right in the middle, press down, give it a little spin to loosen it from the cutter, like so, and lift that away. And then you're going to put that into the oven for a full hour at Primrose recommended temperature, and we're only going to need to do one bake. But yeah, pop that into the oven, full hour, and then we can give it a quick sand and apply the tape. Okay, and once it's finished baking, I just popped it in some water to cool it off. And so now we want to give the sand a little bit of give the back a little bit of a sand, and the same with the front. And so I'm just going to take some 400 grit sandpaper, and I'll just sand the back, and I will also sand the front. So let me just show you the difference between a sanded side and a not sanded side. So bear with me for one moment. It should not take too long to do this, and this will just clean up the mica shift. You'll see once I dip that in some water. Just clean that off, and hopefully there you can see the difference. This side has been sanded, this side has not been sanded, and hopefully you can just see that it's got a deeper mica shift. It's also much smoother to the touch, and so when we put the tape on, it will stick much better. And so I'm going to sand the front and the back. Okay, and once that's done, cut out your tape that you're going to want. Now this tape is on a acrylic backing, so there are 2 layers here that you need to peel back. Now it can be a little bit difficult to get it to peel back, so the best tip I can give you is to just grab a corner, make sure you cut more than you need, and all I do is I'll have a corner over there, and then just run your finger back and forth, worrying at the edge, and that will start to separate the 2 layers. So there, I've separated that right there. So you can see there, and that will make the process of getting it off much easier. Just trying to get my nail under. There we go. So you can see, nice and easy to get that off. So that's the best tip I can give to get that to cooperate. So then I am going to put this down. Now we can either stick this on, but because it's quite sticky, we're probably not going to get it in the right position right away. So I'd rather take my circle and try to position it like that first. So I think that's roughly the right spot. Let's have a look. I'm quite happy with that. I might fuss with it a little more to get into the right spot. There we go. So I just lifted it up and replaced it down so that feather's there. Okay, then you want to give it a good burnish to make sure that it's nice and stuck down onto the clay. Okay, and then I'm going to use a pair of scissors to just trim around the outside like so. And this should be quite easy because you just need to follow the arc of the clay, like so. And just continue the whole way around. Okay, and here's how it should look when it's done. Now you can leave it like this if you want to, but I feel like it looks unfinished around the edges and I really would like to make a border for it. So now a way we can do this without putting this in the oven, because we can't do that, is this method that I'm going to show you. Bring over a piece of paper, bring over a piece of black clay rolled out in the same setting as you had rolled out the pearl white sheet. Give this a thorough burnish just so that it's stuck down onto the paper, like so. Bring over the cutter that you used to cut out your piece before. Press down and lift up. Then lift this piece up and out of the way. Okay. Then bring over another sheet of polymer clay. Okay. And here's the other piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up. Actually, no, don't lift that up. You want to do just clean up the edge here, because there's some very obvious spots that just need to be kind of trimmed off so they're nice and clean. There we go. Put that to the side. Bring over your other piece on a piece of paper. Burnish that as well. Then bring this piece over. Flip it so that it's on the piece. Very gently burnish around the sides, like so. Okay. Then I'm going to bring this over and I am going to place that inside roughly. Don't press down or anything like that, but do try to position it in the center if you can. Okay. Then bring over your other cutter and I'm just going to put that in place so that I know where to cut. Bring that one out and that will just have centered it nicely. And we're going to cut that. Lift this out. Okay. I'll give this a quick jiggle to try to loosen it. See if that can unstick from the clay, because it's on a piece of paper so it's probably going to stick into the cutter, which is fine. Remove those two pieces of black. And then I'm gently going to work that out of the cutter. Like so. You can see it's unsticking there. There we go. Place that down, give it a burnish. Okay. Now don't worry about the edges, we're going to sand that up later on. What I want to do now is make sure that it is going to fit our piece perfectly. So take that, and what I want you to do is grab a bit of tape, pinch it in the middle, like so, and then stick it onto your piece. Like so, and this will give you something to pull up from. And what I want you to do is insert that in there. Okay, don't stick it down hard or anything like that. And then I want you to just go around the edges of your piece and smooth it up against the cabochon, and this is going to close up any gaps. I mean, it will have a little bit of a gap left, but it's going to close up any major gaps that might be there, just so that when we do insert it later after the bake, it's going to sit nicely. Now I'll also take this opportunity to smooth around the edges, like so. And this will also close up a lot of gaps. And the thing is, you don't need to worry because you can just yank this out when you need to. Run your fingers around the sides and just give it a nice smooth finish as best you can. Then when you're done, very carefully lift that up and out, like so. Then you're going to put that into the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And when you've done that, you can just easily lift that tape off, and it does no damage to the piece whatsoever. Okay, so this one I'm actually going to put a dome of resin over it, and the cabochon I'm not going to be putting resin over. So actually, no, we'll put resin over the whole thing, I think. Let me think about it for a minute. And I think I will put resin on this, so it's just the resin cabochon. So put that down. I'm going to bring over our resin. And this is the resin that I'm using. I do sell this brand on my Etsy shop if you're interested. And all this is going to do is it's just going to kind of give it a glass-like finish. It also will help seal that tape onto the surface of the clay. Okay, I'll just pour a bit of resin on there. Then I'll just use these to smooth the resin over and just bring it all the way up to the edges, like so. And then I will put that into the UV light for about 15 minutes. You can put in for longer if you want. And then when that's done, I'll put that to the side, and we can put that inside the cabochon when we have finished with that. Okay, and then when you've done resining it, I want to bring over some black acrylic paint, and we really don't need much. That should do. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of that, and I'm going to paint the edge. And this is just so that when we do put it in the bezel, it's that edge blends in. Because if you leave it white, the seam between the bezel and this will be very obvious. So I recommend painting the edges whatever colour your bezel happens to be. You don't need a lot, just want to go around the edges like so. And there we go, that's all you have to do. Okay. Put that to the side, and I'm going to bring over the bezel, which has been baked, and I have also sanded the sides and I gave it a quick buff, and I did that along the edges as well, so it's nice and clean. Put that to the side as well, and I want you to bring over a glue. I'm using a 2-part epoxy glue today. Okay. Just get that glue to run. This is a bit old, so give it a moment. There we go, just had to get it to run. So you should have 2 parts like that. Mix that together thoroughly, and you have about 5 minutes of working time once you start mixing it, at least for the glue that I'm using. You can use Gorilla Glue as well, that's something that works quite well. I don't have any of that at the moment, so I'm going to be using this. And this works well on plastics as well. So I'm just going to take that and go just kind of smear that around the piece. You don't need a lot of glue for this. I don't want to accidentally overfill. So I'll just kind of spread it around the middle. Making sure not to accidentally dip my piece in the glue over there. Okay. And that will do. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to slot it into place, and that should fit quite snugly. Just press down firmly to get that glue to stick. And you can move this around if you need to get it to fit a bit better. So you might find some areas it might look better in some regards, in some if you need to twist it around. And then I would recommend leaving that for about half an hour before fussing with it. Okay, and while the glue's still wet, I'm actually going to bring a stick-on bail. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that glue. You really only need a small amount. Just make sure you find a glue that sticks to plastics, because if it doesn't stick to plastics and also metal as well, if it doesn't stick to those two things, then this bond's not going to be very strong. Just dab a bit of glue on, you really don't need a lot. Find your center point, so I'm going to just pop this down, and we have a decent amount of working time, so don't hurry. Find the center point, and when you find it, pop that down, like so. And you can fuss with it a little bit, but in general I don't want to be messing with it too much. And then leave that all for about 10 minutes to half an hour. Okay, and here it is once it's finished drying. So you can see there how it looks. So I'd recommend leaving this to dry, the glue that is, for at least 12 hours before actually wearing the piece, just because you want to make sure that it's completely dry. It will be hard enough for you to handle after about 10-20 minutes, but yeah, definitely give it some time before really putting it to use. But yeah, that's basically the pendant. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. Keep in mind that this technique can be done with just about any design of the washi tape that you want. And if you don't have washi tape, silk screens also work really well for this. And image transfers as well, so feel free to play around with that. There is a discount for 10% off in the description below. Please check that out. And there's also an affiliate link in the description if you want to have a look at those tapes, so please do check them out. And as always, I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.